Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of online learning. After this week, we only have one more week to go, so we've almost made it. For this past week, I had you reading Romeo and Juliet, and we're going to go over the questions that you answered for Romeo and Juliet, Acts 1 and 2, after we talk about what you have to do this week. So, if you look at this week, and I did send out an email to your parents about this yesterday as a heads up, and hopefully they passed it on to you, but just in case they didn't. Okay, so you find where we are here. Okay, so up here starts your directions for the week. I'm not going to open them up. You can read them pretty much on your own. Things that you need to do for me this week. All right, so in the email I sent home Saturday night, there's a survey that the district would like you to do about your experiences with online learning and how well you did, and do you feel that it's effective? What could have been done better? Do you feel that you received a good education, etc.? All right, and that survey is between the district and a company called Bright Bites. So you want to take this survey. After that, this is, well, if you had Ms. Duncan for gym, or health, you probably know that she's retiring at the end of this school year. Ms. Schuett, another gym health teacher, is putting together a shout out video for Ms. Duncan. So I'm putting a link in here that if you had her in class and you want to say goodbye and good luck or congratulations, you can do that. So that's here. The link is in here. All right. So the next thing I want you to do, even though it's not listed here, is you need to read and watch the movie again for Act 3 and Act 4. After you finish reading and watching the movie, there's 2 short review videos out on YouTube for both of these acts as well. They're not nearly as interesting as the first 2, but I think that they do an adequate job at reviewing those 2 acts for you to get you ready to do the Act 3 discussion and the Act 4 discussion, which will be due on Friday by 11:59 p.m. So those are the things that you want to concentrate on for this week. Next week, we're going to move on. We're going to finish the play. We're going to finish the play. We'll do the movie again. We'll do a video again. We'll have the discussion questions. And then also next week will be some type of a short test on Romeo and Juliet. And then that'll be it. We will have finished out the year with Romeo and Juliet. We will have accomplished everything in this year that I had set out to do. The research paper a little bit more expanded than I would have done if we would have been face to face, and the Romeo and Juliet a whole lot abbreviated. If we would have been face to face, it would have been a lot lengthier. So let's talk about those questions for Act 1 and Act 2. All right, so here are the discussion questions for Act 1. The first one is, in the prologue, what does the chorus say will happen to the 2 lovers? The prologue is the sonnet that starts out the play. And in the sonnet, you get kind of like a brief background on what's going to happen in the story and what you can expect to occur at the end of the story. And you find out in the sonnet that Romeo and Juliet will die by the end of the play. Question number 2 says, what does Aeschylus say he will do to anyone who fights in the future? Aeschylus is Prince Aeschylus, and he comes between the Montagues and the Capulets when they start fighting again, and he says that if anybody fights in the future, he will either have them exiled or he will kill them himself, because he's trying to put an end to this feud because he's pretty much sick and tired of it. He isn't related really to either the Capulets or to the Montagues. but his cousin Mercutio is a friend of Romeo. And later on, we find out that Paris is also related to, politically related to Ascalus as well. There's a reason for him to want this feud to stop. Question number 3 says, how does Benvolio say the fighting began? He says that it began between the two household servants, and they're baiting each other into fighting, and then the fighting just develops from there. Number 4, according to Benvolio and Mercutio, how has Romeo been acting recently? And they feel that Romeo, especially Mercutio, feels that Romeo has been acting kind of sappy lately, real melancholy, lovesick. He's in love with a girl named Rosaline, and Rosaline won't give him the time of day. His love for Rosaline is unrequited, and he's, pretty much like a sad puppy dog walking around with his tail between his legs. And Mercutio has kind of had enough of it. Benvolio is a little bit more laid back and easygoing and kind of lets Romeo be moody. Number 5, what remedy does Benvolio suggest for Romeo's problem? He says to Romeo, let's go to a party, or let's go out and let me show you women who are far more beautiful than Rosaline. And once you see how beautiful these women are, you'll know that Rosaline is nothing to look at, and there's no reason there to be sad that she's not spending any time with you, or she doesn't want you for a boyfriend, or whatever. But we need to go out and we need to look at other women, because that's where you'll find your happiness. Question number 6 says, in scene 2, what does Capulet tell Paris he will have to do in order to marry Juliet? Okay, so first let's get some boundaries established. We have Juliet, who's 13, we have Romeo, who's 16, and then we have Paris, who is older. Back in these days, it would not have been unusual for a man of an older age, let's say 20, to marry a girl of a younger age, say 13. And the reason that they did that is because in those days, it wasn't unusual for a woman to die in childbirth. And because younger women, it's easier for them to have children. A man who was older would look for a woman who was younger, a girl who was younger, who would most likely not die in childbirth. So it wasn't really seen like today. If a 20-year-old man would be interested in a 13-year-old girl, that'd be something totally illegal, and we'd never allow it to happen. That guy would go to jail for it. But back in these days, it was legal, and oftentimes parents would set up these marriages so that they knew their daughters were married to a good man, and they also used it to create ties in the family. The families got stronger through good marriages. So that's what's occurring there. So when Paris goes to Capulet and asks for Juliet's hand in marriage, Capulet says, you need to woo my daughter. In other words, you have to seduce her. You need to get her to love you. I'm just not going to give you my daughter, because my daughter is the light of my life and she means everything to me, and I'm not going to do something like that. You have to woo her. You have to make her love you. Number 7, why does the servant ask Romeo to read the list of guests who are invited to the party at the Capulets? Well, when Lord Capulet gave his servant the list of names of people to invite, it didn't cross his mind that his servant might not be able to read the names. So here's the servant walking around aimlessly trying to invite all the right people and not being able to read the names. So he goes to Romeo, not knowing who Romeo is, gets Romeo to read the names to him, and then he turns around and invites Romeo and Benvolio to the party as well. Again, without knowing that Romeo is a Montague, because had he known that, he would never, 1, he never would have talked to him, and 2, he definitely would not have invited him to the party. Okay, so what makes Romeo decide to go to the party? Well, it's not Benvolio and Mercutio, even though they're in the background saying, there's far prettier women there, let's go look at the other women. Romeo actually hears that Rosaline is going to be there, so his whole reason for going to the party at the Capulets is to see Rosaline. Number 9, like I said, in scene 3, we learn how old Juliet is. Juliet is 13. Question number 10 is, what is the nurse's opinion of Paris? She tells Juliet that Paris is a fine young man of excellent breeding, and that, he wouldn't be a bad choice as far as marrying goes. How do Romeo and his friends plan to hide their identity at the Capulets' party? Would just fate has it, or luck has it, it's a masquerade ball. So everybody who goes to the party, they're all going to be in masks. So as long as they're behind their masks and you can't hear them, as long as they're not speaking, then you'll have no way of knowing who they actually are. So they're going to hide behind masks. Who is Queen Mab? Queen Mab is a fairy. Mercutio tells a funny story about Queen Mab, how she comes into people's dreams and she seduces people in their dreams. And Queen Mab, this is the first time she's ever noted in literature, but she's often talked about from this point on out. What feelings about dreams does Mercutio express in his Queen Mab monologue? Again, it's a long monologue about Queen Mab and how Queen Mab goes into people's dreams and she seduces them. She makes warmongers more bloody, more bloodthirsty, more lustful for revenge. She makes lovers want to be with the ones that they love. She makes rulers greedy and wanting of more power. So she takes an aspect of something that is maybe good for that person characteristically, and then makes it something really, really terrible. So it starts out as a dream, only to become a nightmare later on. At the end of scene 4, what does Romeo fear? Romeo fears that his undoing is going to come when he goes to Oliver. Carly, you need to get him to be quiet.
Go ahead.
Okay, so anyways, Romeo's fear at the end of scene 4 is that when he goes into the party at the Capulets, that this is going to be his demise. Something bad is going to come out of this. And he fears, although he doesn't come out and say it, he kind of implies that it could be the death of him for going to this party, which later on we're going to find out going to this party really is the death of him. How does Romeo react when he first sees Juliet? Instant, spontaneous, love at first sight. Rosaline who? He's completely forgotten about her. To what does he compare her? There's many, many, many metaphors that you can look for in the story of what he compares Juliet to. How does Juliet react to Romeo in their first meeting? She too instantly, spontaneously, love at first sight. And in the beginning of their relationship, Romeo is definitely the aggressor, all right? He's the one that's kind of watching her and wants to be with her. But by the end of Act 1, the roles have reversed, and they pretty much stay reversed for most of the story. Juliet becomes the aggressor. When Romeo suggests that he wants to kiss her, she allows him to kiss her, which in those days would have been a really bad thing. A woman would never have done something like that, especially when meeting a man for the first time. That was completely uncalled for. But then she turns the dice on her, turns the tail on him, and says that she wants to kiss him back. And now she's become the aggressor. And then also at the end of Act 1, she is the one who suggests that if he is going to return to her the next day, he should return to her and propose marriage to her. So it's not Romeo's idea that they get hitched and become married. It's actually Juliet's idea that they get hitched and get married. All right, so she takes on the more male dominating traits, and Romeo becomes more of, I don't want to say the submissive because that's not the right word, but he goes along with what she wants. She's kind of being the assertive one. She's kind of setting down the rules, and he's following along with what she wants. Number 17, how does Tybalt react to the news of Romeo at the party? He's ready to throw down. He's ready to have a fight. He's ready for an all-out brawl. He wants Romeo's blood. How dare Romeo show up at a Capulet party? And then how does Capulet react? Capulet pretty much tells Tybalt that he needs to just cool his jets. All right, he's heard that Romeo is a good young man, and there's really no reason for Romeo not to be there. So that's pretty much how Act 1 ends. So let's go to Act 2. So give me a second here to get to Act 2. That's not it.
It's as simple as that. From the makers of Blue Moon.
Okay. Not as many questions this time. All right, so again, question number 1 talks about Romeo comparing Juliet. There's many, many metaphors for the comparison that he makes to Juliet. Of course, Juliet is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. Number 2, who do Mercutio and Benvolio think Romeo is with? They try to catch up to him. He's run out on them. They think that he is hiding somewhere with Rosaline, that he has actually slipped away with her, and that they are talking, and they don't want to be bothered. So they're not trying to meet up with Mercutio or Benvolio. Number 3, why does Juliet want Romeo to have some other name? Well, she loves Romeo. Like I said, love at first sight. She loves Romeo. But she dislikes his last name. And her point is that Romeo would still be Romeo, regardless of what Romeo's last name is. So if he could be, say, Romeo Smith or Romeo Jones or Romeo Miller, it would be perfectly fine. Why does he have to be Romeo Montague? So she wishes that he had some other name so that they could be together, because as she sees it, they can't be together because they're sworn enemies. Their families are sworn enemies. When Juliet discovers Romeo at her balcony, what does she fear? So she's had this whole big discussion up on the balcony about how she loves Romeo and how she wishes Romeo had some other name besides Romeo. Now Romeo appears, and she's like, oh my God, I hope Romeo didn't hear what I just said. So she totally is, embarrassed by the fact that she said all these things and Romeo might have actually heard her. Number 5, why does Juliet fear the love that she and Romeo share? She fears that their love could be the end of Romeo. If Romeo is found there by any of her relatives or any of the servants for the Capulets, they're going to kill him because he's trespassed on their ground. He's actually, climbed the balcony to Juliet's window. If they find him there, her love for him could end up being the death of Romeo. What concerns does Friar Lawrence have about Romeo and Juliet's relationship? They're moving way too fast, They're just young kids. They're just teenagers. The one just 13. And he's so afraid that they're moving too fast and they need to slow down. They need to think about the consequences of what they're doing. And he makes some comment about people who rush in stumble along the way. And I think we can all understand that. When you rush into something, you don't look around to see if there's any potholes or anything like that you may stumble over. You stumble into them and fall. And that's what he's afraid is going to happen to Romeo and Juliet. Number 7, why does Friar Lawrence agree to help the two of them? Why does he agree to marry them? He says that if he marries the 2 children of the 2 feuding families, then maybe the feuding families will stop feuding. So that's the reason why he marries them. He doesn't marry them so much because he believes Romeo and Juliet are in love. He believes he can bring an end to the feud. Number 8, why has Tybalt sent a letter to Romeo's house? Tybalt, again, from the previous act, is still very angry that Romeo had the audacity to show up at a Capulet party, and he's pretty much calling him out. Let's meet, let's throw down, let's get this over with. I don't want you to be around Juliet. I don't want you in the Capulet house. We need to get this out in the open. We need to put an end to it. What warning does the nurse give to Romeo? The nurse tells Romeo that if his intentions to marry Juliet is just so that he can be with Juliet, then he needs to leave her alone. In other words, if his reason for being with Juliet is to disgrace her by being with her in a marriage kind of way, then he needs to rethink his plans, because the nurse says that she will find him and she'll get even with him if those are his intentions of using Juliet. Number 10, what message does Romeo give to the nurse to tell Juliet? Romeo tells the nurse to tell Juliet that they will be married the following day. Number 11, why is Juliet annoyed at the beginning of scene 5? When finally the nurse comes back to tell Juliet about the marriage proposal from Romeo, she acts like she's too tired to do it. Oh, my feet hurt. Oh, my back hurt. Oh, my arms hurt. Oh, my shoulder hurt. I need to sit. I'm hungry. I'm tired. A million different reasons why she can't tell Juliet about the proposal of marriage. And then finally she relents and she tells Juliet that Romeo wants to marry her the following day. Number 12, what fears does Friar Lawrence express in scene 6? Again, he fears that the young couple are moving too quickly. They're not thinking about the consequences of their actions. And he fears what might be the ultimate consequence for these two children getting married against their parents' wishes. Okay, so that brings us to the end of Act 2. Now for this week, Act 3 and 4, and the discussion questions to go with Act 3 and 4. And again, you choose the version that you want to read. Watch the movie as you read it. I think that's the best choice. Watch the review videos, the YouTube videos, and then into answering those questions. And those questions should be easy after all that. We'll meet this time again next week. Same review type deal. An assignment, like I said, to finish it out, and then a test, and then we're done for the year. So I hope you had a great weekend. It was a beautiful weekend, especially Friday and Saturday. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.